Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears tonight as we get into seances, paranormal, connecting with the ghosts that walk among us. Yes, Varla Ventura is here tonight. We're going to have a good time with her, as we always do on Our Cryptid World. Yes, varlaventura.net is the website. She's not a .comer. No, she's a .netter. No dirty filth tonight. He's got some stuff to take care of around home. So it's just you, me, and Varla. And let's say hello to all of you as race fans in the gold medal position. Excuse me. Raymond L. taking home the silver. Chris 716 with the bronze medal tonight. JSCO, how you doing? Roy Boyd, Laura Lobbs, Dino Bravo, Paramarv, and Boeen is here, and a Boeen will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind. To the left of the studio. Debster, how are you, Debster? Thank you for the tweet while I'm eating a cookie. Love it. Luscious Jules, Robert Lamoth, Lee the Bee, how are you? Good to see you, Dutch Hank. Just another guy named Harry, Sir Grizz, Penman, and Verpine. How are you? Simon the Dogface, what's happening? Jessica S. Rose Brooks, Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, Kurt M. Number 36 in your program, starting at right wing, Lars Janssen, Stockholm, Sweden. Beautiful. Beautiful to see you. Hi, Jen A. and Richard Elmore. What's happening? And who else do we have here? Let's take a look. Palladium, my man. Donna L. Vash the Impaler. Ozzy. Oi, oi to you, my friend. Ozzy's going to be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind. To the right of the studio. National Memorial. Scrub-a-dub-dub. How are you? And who else do we got here? Yum Yum Devil. It's been a while. Good to see you. Dark Protocol. How you doing? Who else do we got? I'm like in slow motion today. Be the Arrow. Vixen Doe. Big Dog. How are you? Pixie Lara. Lioness of Gaia. Sandra Kincaid. Tokeland. Well, that's about my speed right now. Blue Cruise and Big Dog, thank you so much for kicking off the super chat tonight. Very much appreciate the love and support, Big Dog. And yeah, we'll see you in Reno next year as well, my man. Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. Scott Borean, welcome to SOR Chat. Good to have you here. Vanessa, thank you for joining us. Hi, Corruption Czar. And JBD, welcome to SOR Chat. And who else we got? Eddie Petch, good to see you, my man. Penny Van, always a pleasure. Let's get the radio side started, shall we? And, okay, we're going to play that game. All right. That's okay. That's okay. Sometimes it does that. But, hold on. That way we can let Bill WD40, enter the chat room and lube us up for tonight's show. We got here. We got some time here. Seriously, I am in total slow motion. You know what it is? I had a nice warm bath right before the show. Yeah, it's got me on like relax mode right now. Yeah. We'll pep it up in like 30 seconds. Watch the game change. Nick Adkins, good to see you. And yeah. Varla Ventura. She returns. Super chat is open. And of course, give us a thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways if you're brand new here. And of course, our store is open at our website, spacedoutradio.com. Do me a favor, everyone. Horns up. Let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. A great show of infotainment tonight as we look at the monsters among us. Varla Ventura is back for Our Cryptid World. Then in hour number 3, Steve Stockton from Among the Missing brings us another missing person mystery. Then after that, we have Bigfoot Rob coming in for the Cryptid Report. It's Dave 101 night. You know I'm heading UFO with that one. Get off my lawn. And of course, the strange news of the week. Yes, near the end of each month, we are happy to be joined by one of our favorite cryptid authors. Varla Ventura returns for Our Cryptid World. Her website, varlaventura.net, where she comes on in to talk about the monsters among us. Yes, we're not talking Sasquatch. We're not talking Dogman. We're talking all the creepy critters that go bump in the night, things that want to suck your blood, things that want to steal your soul, things that come out of mirrors at night. And this is why we love her, because it is the darkness that rules the night, which is why we own the night around here. Varla Ventura, it is always a pleasure to have you on Spaced Out Radio, my good friend. It is that time again where we get to say hello to you. What have you been up to?
Hello. I have been traveling quite a bit, actually, again, back and forth from California. And I've also been doing a bunch of cool research for a conference that's coming up in September called the Scottish Goddess Conference. And their topic this round is Oracles of the Divine. So I'm doing a bit of a paranormal history, women's history lecture. So I've been working on that, and just having a couple
strange ghosty things happen in a couple of pioneer cemeteries, and the usual.
Oh yeah. There's anything to freak everybody out, which is always nice. And I want to say, it's hard to believe it's already been a couple months since we got to hang out. I don't like that. I like hanging out with Varla.
It feels like it's been a really long time, like months, really.
You know what?
It's only been a couple.
We're gonna have to put something in between.
A midsummer conference.
No, not a conference. conferences are too passe. I think we're just going to have to just say, do 2 of these spaced out radio get-togethers a year. I
Yeah.
really think we're going to have to. Now they
Spring
may
and fall.
spring and fall, spring and fall. Spread the love around. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm thinking. I don't know, but who am I?
West Coast, East Coast.
Could be,
Mm-hmm.
could be, but that's for another day, another topic.
Yeah.
You are someone who is very much a vaunted. I love that word, vaunted.
Great word.
Yes, I've never used that word on this show, by the way.
Oh,
All
well,
right.
it's perfect for considering the alliteration here.
You are a vaunted character of the cryptid world. And every time we bring you on, I always ask you this opening question because our audience is always changing. You fell in love with the cryptid and the paranormal world at a very young age. You grew up with it. Looking back on it, how much fun or how much different was your childhood than the most of us have experienced?
Well, I mean, there's nothing like going back for a visit to realize just how unusual your upbringing is. I mean, I don't know if it was necessarily more fun or more exciting than anyone else's, but I certainly spent a lot of time doing things that I later learned were not as common for children to do. Um, I spent a good chunk of my childhood in cemeteries. And for everything from, taking when we used to live in the San Francisco Bay Area, my mom we didn't have our own washer and dryer. So I must have been probably not even 5 years old. And we used to go, because I probably wasn't in school or anything. So we would go and do this laundry on the hill. And then we would go and eat sandwiches in the cemetery nearby while the laundry was washing and drying. That was very common. And we would walk around, and in that area, there's this huge, there's this place called Colma. You might be familiar with it, Dave, because you've been to that area a couple times. But Colma is really the city of the dead. It's where all of the cemeteries in San Francisco were kind of moved, actually, in the 1920s. The cemeteries were, quote unquote, relocated to this other area south of San Francisco called Colma. And so now there are more dead residents than living, and it's just cemetery after cemetery after cemetery. And I always found that to be, it was beautiful. It was gardens. We could go and we could run around. There were beautiful sculptures. There were ducks and duck ponds, a couple of relatives there that we'd visit sometime, but it was never presented as a somber or scary place. And then when we moved out of the Bay Area and we moved to this little, pioneer town way up in the Sierra Nevadas, where there are tons of UFO encounters, by the way, we would explore the cemeteries there, these little abandoned, dusty cemeteries with, ivy growing over the iron around the gate, and looked like no one had been there for a century or so. And we would, every Halloween, we had to walk through the cemetery. That was just sort of our tradition. You go from one end to the other of this particular cemetery before you'd go trick-or-treating or anything like that. So cemeteries played a big role in my upbringing. And I think as a result, I came to see them as safe places. And so as I went out into the world as a young 20s woman, and I would move to these different towns and go to these different places, whenever I would feel lost or unsure of what I was doing, I would just go sit in a cemetery, and I always felt very safe there. Never really occurred to me that that was odd. I still don't think it's odd, but that it wasn't as commonplace. I honestly thought everyone did that because, I have siblings. We all did it. We kind of grew up with this appreciation for cemeteries and for the kind of beauty that they hold, those cement gardens. So then I, became an adult and found out people were afraid to go in cemeteries. And I thought that was odd. I still think that's weird.
Do you believe that if you would have grown up differently, that you'd be doing something else now? If you weren't the queen of the cryptids, queen of the darkness, where would you be right now?
It's so interesting that you asked that, Dave, because we're like on the same wavelength. I've actually been thinking about like parallel lives. I just finished a novel all about this woman who basically goes to it's called the Midnight Library. And she basically goes to like something like the Akashic Records. She goes to this library when she's on the verge of death and starts pulling all of these books that are alternate lives. And in many of them, there's a lot of the same recurring characters, but a slightly different configuration. She doesn't marry this person. She does marry that person. She goes on to be successful. She's a rock, like all of these different things. And there's all this kind of like, it's that idea of like the parallel universes. So, I mean, honestly, I can't really say what things would have been like because I have no reference point for not being surrounded by witchy things from a young age. I mean, another very early memory of mine is just making like witch art with my mom, not at Halloween. So there was always like that sort of vintage witch iconography around me that I grew up around. My mom just had this, she was an artist. So she always had like a lot of beautiful, strange objects, and she was very interested in the occult. So there were also very interesting books. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe I would have been a devout Catholic. I don't know. I mean, I only say that because I think I have a mind that is attracted to sort of the unknown and the, slightly dark spirituality. And I think there's a lot of dark spirituality in the Catholic Church and in the, Gothic cathedrals and dark stained glass and the rituals and the drinking of the blood and such. But I really can't say, I mean, what I would be if I hadn't been exposed to these things. I don't know, just another person, I guess, cruising around, not looking for ghosts. I can't imagine. It's just too. I can't really. I can't imagine.
Can you recall the first ghostly experience that you had?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What was that about? Did it freak you out?
No, it didn't freak me out. It confused me. So I got to go back because I had quite a few childhood ghost encounters and other sort of paranormal encounters. But because I was so young, I have kind of my memory of what happened has evolved. And I don't know if it's from the retelling or if it's just now clouded by other experiences that I've had. I remember on more than one occasion waking up and just seeing something completely just shimmering at the foot of the bed, like not scary, but just something completely silhouetted and sort of moving in the shadows, sort of a purple darkness, but also with like some sparks of light. I remember seeing things like that quite frequently as a very little kid. I also saw things in the forest when we moved from the urban area that we were living in. We moved to the middle of the woods, very, very rural, like no electricity or running water or anything like that. So very, very far out there. And I saw things in the woods there all the time. Small creatures, big creatures, voices that I would hear. As I got older, more of my experiences tended toward clairaudience, which is the, hearing things more frequently, hearing specific voices or sentences. So I started kind of seeing less, but having more experiences. Bless you. So I think, yeah, I mean, a lot of those real early ones are kind of mixed together, and the ones that I recall more vividly, certainly seem like the ghosts of relatives and things like that. But one of the, you know, as I got older, I started having more clearer but a little bit less showy experiences. So I would hear things and I would feel things frequently, something sitting on the foot of the bed. Um, Not every place that I've lived in, like, I can't even count how many different, funky little apartments I've lived in over the years. Not every place that I've lived has had something, but frequently I've had something in the apartment. You know, ghost animals, voices. And I think it wasn't really until I sat down to write the book, Paranormal Parlor, where I was collecting other people's ghost stories and I was collecting lists of haunted cemeteries and things like that. And I originally thought this is going to be a collection of ghost stories. I'm going to interview people and they're going to give me their stories. And as I was, and it does have that, but as I was writing it, I kept finding all of these sort of memories sparked from the stories that people were giving me. And so it ended up being probably the most personal book I've ever written. And I really, like, when I got to the end of it, all of the chapter introductions are about my own personal paranormal encounters. And I got to the end of it, I thought, actually, I've had a quite a number. I mean, multiple times a year, things happen. So certainly not a once in a lifetime. So I don't know if I can remember I remember the very first kind of more paranormal experience I had, but the very first, like, ghost, I think, was probably just one of those, like, sparkly shadow friends. And you asked if I was scared, and I think you can probably tell by the
Did you have a lot of human friends?
Well, I had my sister who's also, like, really into horror and stuff. Yeah, I mean, sure, we played with other humans, but when we moved to the middle of the woods, no, of course not. There were no other children up there except for when we started school, and those kids all, had to walk a mile to this rural bus stop and such. But yeah, I mean, sure, I spent a good amount of time alone. But I will say, like, I think the other part of your question was, did it scare me? And I mean, I think you can tell, no, not really, right? But one of the reasons I think it didn't scare me, and I think this is a big point for the way that we treat children when they describe these kind of paranormal experiences, that we sometimes just dismiss as imaginary friends or overactive imagination or things like that, is the way that my mom reacted to it. And she did not set me up to be afraid. She just asked very matter-of-fact questions. She didn't dismiss it and say, oh, it's nothing, you're just making that up. Because that's actually a really terrible feeling when you see something and you've had an experience and then somebody tells you it's not real. Yeah, everyone's shaking their heads right now. Like, that's happened to all of us, right? It's like they try and make you think you're crazy. But truly, like, we do this inadvertently with children all the time. We kind of dismiss their stories. We dismiss their point of view. And I was lucky enough that my mom believed in those things, but also believed in the power of children to be conduits. And, she understood that I was probably having a real experience, and she made it into something very normal. So it wasn't paranormal at all. It was very normal.
One of the things that I like to do with my son, and it's kind of the same way with yours, is I don't dismiss his experiences. Give you an example. We were
Yeah.
out in the forest about a week and a half ago, and my buddy Mike and I were sitting on his tailgate, and we were just getting swarmed by mosquitoes. And he kind of points like this, and he goes, I'm getting a feeling that we're being watched over there. Kind of whispers it to me. And no word of a lie, Varla, about 25 feet away is my son playing in this giant dirt pile, looking like the kid from Charlie Brown.
Big Ben.
And all of a sudden he jumps up from the dirt pile and he says, "Dad, they're here." And I said, "Where?" And he points in the exact direction my friend Mike pointed.
Yikes.
I said, "How many are there over there?" He goes, "One." I said, "How big is he?" And he says, "About 10 to 15 meters tall." We got meters and feet mixed up. But just the fact that he felt confident enough to actually say something to me was very warming. Knowing that I, as an adult, was trusting him with that information, it made him feel important. And that way he could, that he wasn't, doing something wrong
Yeah.
about his own intuitiveness. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. That's it right there, Dave. It's that instinctive oppression of our intuition, and it starts at a very young age, and then the doubt continues to build up, and you already start doubting things as an adult. So being able to kind of nurture a child's intuition, I mean, that in the long run, it's good for their mental health. It's good for their abilities, psychic and otherwise, to know who to trust and who not to trust as they go out into the world. So absolutely. And I think that just by listening and and not having that knee-jerk reaction of, oh, he can't possibly have seen that, or because you asked that question, like, who would I be? I don't know who I would be if I had grown up having all of these. I believe I would have had these experiences regardless. I don't know who I would have been if they hadn't been, if I, not necessarily encouraged, but if I hadn't been, if my intuition hadn't been encouraged, if my own abilities had been scoffed at or dismissed, I don't know who I would be. I'd probably be like real mean, you know.
Oh, I hear you. I hear you. As we got about 90 seconds to go here before we got to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Varla Ventura is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Varla, how much? Okay, look, you're a mother. Okay, we've talked about that on the show. We're not going to get too much into your son, because he is a goaltender and he might freak out on me or something like that. Okay, but how much stock do you put in when your own son comes to you and says, "Mom, I'm seeing things," or "I have this feeling"? I mean, what do you do?
Oh, I mean, I probably have very similar reaction to you. I ask calm questions, and actually I kind of, get to full attention, full attention mode. Um, because you can't, it's my belief that you can't really separate, like, if you want them to come to you and tell you about problems that they may have, bigger problems they may face in life, you can't just dismiss when they want to talk to you about a gut feeling. And he certainly has very strong gut feelings. He hasn't had a lot of paranormal experiences that he's told me about, at least, and you'd think he would. But yeah, his gut instincts are great, and I just, I enjoy listening to what he has to say in general. And I think that kind of gives children that feeling that they can trust you.
All right, Varla, I'm going to get you to kick back, relax for just a moment here as we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. When we return with Varla Ventura, the queen of the cryptids, what's it like to talk to the deceased? How do we do it? Seances and more on Spaced Out Radio coming up right after this. Smoke 'em if you got 'em. We'll be right back. All right, we clear.
All right.
What are we drinking tonight?
I was going to ask you, this is water, and this is just a little hard seltzer.
Little hard seltzer.
Not too exciting. I was going to ask you something. Oh no, I was going to tell you something that I took my son to the orthodontist,
Oh yeah.
and he said, you know, you might want to start saving up money now for braces, but if your kid is going to continue to play hockey, don't bother.
I will tell you, I
Oh,
had braces growing up and playing hockey. About once every 3-4 games, I would take a stick or a shoulder check to the head, and
yeah.
it would hit my mouth, so my lips hit my mouth, and then of course there's the rubbing motion that goes along with that, and I'd be spitting up blood
Oh,
all the time. It won't happen as much with him being a goalie.
right. Unless, like,
He takes a shot.
yeah. Yeah. Which, I mean, or unless somehow, I mean, he's had a couple of pucks dent the cage.
Yeah, that
So
happens.
it's possible, but I try not to like really get too concerned about that because I just, I mean, if it's going to happen, there's nothing I can really do to stop it. And I'm not going to take him out of hockey. So, but anyway, I just thought that was really funny that he said, he plays hockey. Yeah, don't bother. Don't bother. I'm like, oh, I thought he was joking. And then he was like dead serious. Oh, okay. Thanks, buddy. Well, at least I know you're honest, not trying to take my money.
Yeah, Paramarv, that was with a cage on. That was with a cage on.
Oh, yours was? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I remember one time I had this guy lined up behind the net. He defenseman of the other team had him lined up behind the net, and I lower my shoulder and I'm just gonna drill him. He's carrying the puck, head down. He sees me at the last second and he elbows me. And he sent me into Tomorrowland like there was no tomorrow. And I remember lying on the ice, knocked out,
Ooh.
trying to open up my eyes. He winded me,
Ooh.
and I couldn't breathe. So my dad was my coach. He comes running up to me on the ice, and I'm knocked out. I don't even know where the hell I am. And so he finally gets me breathing properly, because I got the wind knocked out of me.
Yeah.
And he looks at my face and he's like, "What the F happened to you?" And I guess because I was wearing braces, my mouth was all blood. My nose was turned, okay, because the cage, when it hit straight up. His shoulder went into, or his elbow went into my cage, hit me here,
Oh.
turned, okay, and I didn't know where the hell I was. So he gets me off the ice. And remember, this is before we knew what concussions were.
Right.
Okay, this is 1989, not that long ago. We didn't know what concussions were. And one of my teammates, his dad was a doctor. His dad was like, just let him sit a period and gather. He just got his bell rung.
He'll be fine.
He'll be fine. Just make him sit a period. He'll be fine. Dude, for the next year, I was having vertigo.
Oh, I mean, I bet. Because the first thing they tell you to do when you have a concussion is basically to like not move. You're not supposed to look at screens. You're not supposed to read. You're not supposed to be in bright lights.
Oh, yeah, but back then they didn't have that.
No.
Right? So literally, I remember I had a water bed back then. Okay, like let's age myself here. I had a water bed back then, and I would get up off my water bed, but if I got up too fast, all of a sudden everything is spinning and I'm getting vertigo and I'm like falling back on my bed, and I was just like, you got to be kidding me, right? But that's the way it is. Quickly, hello here to the Desolate One and Stone Hobbit. Thank you for joining us. Do not forget, questions will be asked for Varla in hour number 2. Bobo, you need to calm it down. You're starting to get into Dad's Aqua Velva again. Okay, don't drink that stuff. Jimmy Gonzalez, how are you? Thank you to our super chatters. Big Dog, David times 2, Lily Pond, Charles, and Debster and Rob. Appreciate the love and support. And we don't forget to hit subscribe, ring that bell. If you are new here, we're here 7 days a week for your listening entertainment. Hi, Bombshell Bomber. Here we go. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Always appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Here we go. Varla Ventura is our guest. She is from one of the great states of hockey in the United States, Minnesota. And we are talking about everything cryptid tonight. Her website, varlaventura.net. You can find any of her books at any major bookstore or online. Varla, welcome back.
Thank you.
We're going to get into talking to the dead tonight. Oh, that high, strange spookiness of communication with the other side. Do you enjoy talking to those from another realm?
Sorry, were you asking me that? I thought you were saying you enjoy. Stay with us. Oh, sorry. Yes, of course I do. Yeah, I mean, I've been interested in seances, and one of my earliest memories is being about 7-8 years old and getting a Parker Brothers Ouija board for Christmas and being really, really excited. And actually, so I was visiting my family in California this month, and I was talking with my sister about this very experience where she and I started using this Ouija board and kind of started making contact with things. And she, reminded me again of just how uncomfortable it had made her, and how it really made her like never want to touch another Ouija board, how she never wanted to experience any kind of she was okay with seeing ghosts and such, but to go to those efforts to make contact. And and then we just started laughing, and I was like, well, obviously it had the opposite effect on me. It made me want to do it more. But Ouija boards are just one of many, many tools that can be used to make contact with the other side.
What's your preferential treatment for dealing with spirits?
So I actually like a little spell or a little ritual. If I really want to try and make contact with the spirit, it can be something as elaborate as an entire, invocation to working with the dead, or something as simple as holding an object or an item that belonged to that deceased person. But I think there's kind of a distinction here. So basically, just like in the the brief history of using seances to contact the dead, that really was like people have tried to make contact with something divine or something from the other side, since people were first came into consciousness. As soon as they realized that there might be another side, as soon as they realized that there was a physical death, there were attempts to kind of define what that great divinity is. So that's one thing. But the act of what I like to call kind of those paranormal parlor games, right, where people would sit around and specifically try and contact the dead, that is known as spiritualism. And that was actually was and is a religious movement that really took hold in the United States and Canada to a certain degree, as well as in the UK and parts of Europe, um, from about 1840 to 1930, 1940. And what we have today are sort of some of those remnants of those practices that are now used in terms of mediumship in sort of the modern spiritual and occult community. So those were everything from so the spiritualist movement was basically the idea that you can make contact with the dead, of course, but that the dead there's a purpose to it, that the dead have something to tell us, and that by making contact, we can get these lessons from the other side. And this was a wildly popular idea that really took off in about 1866, so post Civil War, when in the United States, there was a nation in mourning. It was a very bloody war, and there were a lot of people who never saw their loved ones again. At the same time, you also had Mary Todd Lincoln in the White House, who had suffered the loss of a child, and even she was kind of into seances, and she and Lincoln would attend these seances. So when we think of seances, we often think of everybody sitting around with their hands on a table, making meaningful contact, like in Poltergeist or whatever. But there's a lot of different variations. Usually a seance involves a medium. Sometimes it involves someone who is kind of like the conductor, and then there's also the medium who is the conduit. So the medium is the person who is actually channeling those messages. So a seance could be everybody sitting around a table holding hands, with replies such as, shake the table or blow out the candle or knock once or things like that. But they also can be where somebody goes into trance and starts speaking. They can also be a medium who goes into sort of a trance and answers, yes and no questions. There could be spirit boards or Ouija boards, which are a tool. There's other kind of like scrying and divination tools. So there's a wide variety of ways that you can make contact with the dead. But the difference here is that you're not just sort of contacting them to be like, hey, some of it is like, hey, what's up? Are you okay? But it's also the idea that we as the living can get messages from this other beyond. And it was such an obsession, especially from, I'd say, 1865 to about 1915. It was such an obsession in the United States that people were publishing entire works and becoming poet laureates through channeling, through these sessions of going into these seances and making contact with otherworldly beings. So there were, a number of women in particular who found great success, and in some cases made quite a fat living traveling around conducting seances. And another aspect of that kind of making contact with the dead was that a lot of people who were spiritualists were also abolitionists and suffragists. So you kind of had this like melding of these open-minded new philosophies trying to kind of so like, for example, there was one family in Boston who were a well-to-do family, and they hosted Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass, and also the Fox sisters, who are among the most known in the spiritualist community, and who of course had a very fast and furious and then fast and furious career that ended in complete debauchery and poverty. So that's a great story.
Now going back to the 1600s, where seances were extremely popular, what was the attitude back then, and where did things change where all of a sudden it became unacceptable socially and religiously to try and contact the dead?
Well, that's about when everybody started accusing witches of doing everything bad in the world. I mean, the witch craze was really the 1600s in Europe, and that was spurred by the Catholic Church in both Spain and Italy, and it was a power grab, and it kind of pushed up from those the Southern European countries that where the Catholic Church had taken hold, and it really kind of started placing the idea that contact with anything other than the one divine God was a sin. Up until that point, even within the church, speaking in tongues and having visitations from spirits was all part of the natural lexicon, but it also was beginning to be considered something that like to make contact with the dead was considered something quite negative. I am also of the belief that because of the increase in colonization and slavery at the time, there was a great deal of fear of anything that wasn't within the control of the church. And so many of these other religions that explorers were being exposed to as they started to sail around the globe, they were also becoming fearful of those and would equate those with something negative. And therefore, like witchcraft and voodoo started becoming very, very negative things. So there was a power grab. And of course, the women who, it was women who had, the herbal skills and the everyday healing skills. They were the women that you would come to if you wanted to get pregnant or you didn't want to be pregnant. They were the women you came to if you had a sore on your foot, or if you were trying to, enchant the guy down the road. So they were these women who had knowledge of herbs and natural medicine, and often were, kind of a lower class, maybe had some land that somebody else wanted. And so pretty quickly, like, this witch craze took on. And it's also no secret that the witch craze, in which women were seen flying and cavorting with devils, was also spawned by mass poisoning, ergot poisoning, which caused hallucinations. And I think, we think of hallucinations and we think, oh yeah, it's this whole spiritual thing and you go on this trip, but can you imagine not knowing that you're poisoned and being poisoned? And so that was happening also because of this ergot that was growing on rye bread, which was being, the grain was being used throughout Europe, and people were kind of starving, and then they were going crazy. And so, of course, you had the little old ladies as scapegoats. And so, and not just old ladies, but, and there were men, of course. This was the same time when you might have been accused of being a vampire or a werewolf, or another supernatural creature at the same time as being a witch. So the idea of making contact with the other side as being a real negative thing kind of really started taking hold during that period of time. And so things like seances were conducted, and witchcraft were conducted in secret in order to protect people's lives, because didn't take much to, burn you at the stake. It wasn't a huge leap. I went to Scotland a couple of months ago and stood in front of the magnificent Edinburgh Castle and couldn't do anything but think about the thousands of people who had been killed right in that square for being witches, which is not a crime, by the way. So I think that idea, so people continued these practices, but they kept them much more secret. And so that's probably when just doing your average. So really wasn't until a couple of centuries later that it started to become more popular as in an everyday paranormal parlor type thing.
I get that, and I can appreciate that. The idea, though, that people were so believing that they could communicate with their loved ones on the other side, going back to the 1600s, that this literally created an entire entertainment genre where people were having seance parties until all hours of the night. They would wear their best clothing to come on over, and we're going to do some table tipping, and we're going to do some connections with the dead. It became a social atmosphere.
Oh, definitely. Now, that was more in the 1800s where that really kind of
Okay.
started taking off, where we had essentially the paranormal parlor. And in fact, it was frequently the upper echelons of society who would be hosting these things because, one, they had the space, right? They had the parlor with the big, beautiful dining table. And they also kind of had the clout to invite people. And so you would have actually one of my favorite seance stories is this incredible story about seances conducted in City Hall in San Francisco at the turn of the 20th century. So the article was published in, I think, 1901, and it was included such, the chief of police was there. William Randolph Hearst was supposed to attend, but then it was later came out that he suppressed the story and killed the story that the journalist was writing about it. They were conducting seances to try and determine who was the best, most suitable person for the offices. There was, the senators were there, the mayor of San Francisco. And this was it was written in 1900, so it had taken place maybe 5 years before that.
Right.
And yeah, so it really did become a source of entertainment. The Fox sisters are probably the most responsible for that. So the three Fox sisters were, one of them was kind of more of the business manager, and then the other two were kind of the front people. And they were really doing the kind of, the rapping was one of their most common ways of getting messages from the other side. So they would actually perform in front of audiences, and they would do the whole thing of like, is there anybody here? Knock once for yes, knock twice. And they had this really incredible career where the sisters all just kind of traveled around the United States, and they actually were even sent to Europe, and they were sent all over, quite famous, and they were paid quite handsomely, until one of the cousins, actually, one of their cousins who worked for them, betrayed them and leaked to the press that they were faking it. And then one of the sisters took a payout and said, yes, it's true, we were faking it. And then they all tried to take it back, but by then it was too late. And the two sisters died of, like, they were penniless and alcoholics. And the one sister who had been the manager just sort of faded into the society without too much money or fame. And actually that kind of theme happened pretty frequently because people were, getting all this money, and there was all this stuff happening. And then, in terms of the spiritualist movement and seances and making contact, and, like the psychometry with like photographs and things like that, where they were, using all the spirit box and all this stuff. And in fact, people didn't know very much about this technology because it was all new. So with any kind of movement, as you well know, because you experience this all the time within the UFO community, there's always somebody who's in it just for attention, or there's somebody who's in it and it's a hoax. And so there were more and more hoaxes. Actually, Harry Houdini made it one of his life's kind of missions to, it wasn't that he didn't believe in contact with the other side, but he knew a lot of stage tricks, and he could recognize the charlatans almost immediately. And so he also was active in trying to kind of discount a lot of those the stage performers who were saying that they were making contact, but really they were just trying to get, $5 off you. So that, as things became, as technology became a little more common, telephones and radios and things like that, You had a couple of big scandals like the Fox sisters and people who Houdini was kind of outing. It became a little bit less popular. And in fact, over time, once you hit like the 30s and 40s, it actually, in the 1930s and 40s, it actually sort of became embarrassing to people to admit that they were part of this movement. And so the tailings of it kind of went underground into more of the spiritual and theosophical philosophies that still survive today, but kind of became part of the what eventually became the Age of Aquarius and the modern New Age movement that had a revival in the 1960s. So it's always been there, but it just kind of had these ebbs and flows. But absolutely, like, you would have these people in their high collars and their, fancy clothes attending these seances with straight faces, trying very hard to, make contact. And then there would be one chosen person. But of course, after a while, you couldn't tell if it was somebody just trying to make money or if it was somebody who was legitimately having this sort of channeled experience.
Right. Okay. So the idea behind this was what at the time? Was it communication with loved ones, or was it
Yeah.
entertainment?
So it was communication with loved ones was the fundamental principle. So the original like spiritualist movement was founded with the idea, and you had communities like Lilydale, and there's another one down in Florida where people would settle specifically to kind of live this spiritual practice in which they regularly made contact with the dead. And that was to get guidance and to get wisdom from the other side, and also to help answer the question. Within that, you did have individuals who were seeking information about loved ones. Are they okay? And that's why post Civil War, it really amped up in popularity, because there were the entire nation was in mourning. That was just like that's the bloodiest war to date, I believe, in terms of lives lost. And there were so many people who never saw their son, their father, their brother, their husband again, right? They just never saw them again. So all they got was the little notice in the mail, and maybe they got to bury them. So there were people who were looking for answers, like any of us would, right? We're looking for signs and looking for confirmation that the person that we love that isn't with us isn't suffering anymore, and that they're okay. And
Sorry for cutting you off
no,
there.
No, please.
We got about 90 seconds. Was there a belief in a real, what we would consider today, a heaven or hell?
Yes, actually, the one of the misnomers about the spiritualist movement was that it was pagan, and it wasn't at all. In fact, it was very much in keeping with people would go to seances on Saturdays and they would go to church on Sundays. There was not a conflict between making contact with the dead and going to, a Christian church the next day, because it really was believed to be legitimate in a way that you could make contact with someone, that it wasn't in conflict with the popular belief in the afterlife. In fact, it fueled, it actually fed off of a lot of that. The idea of heaven, and did you make it to heaven? That was frequently a question. There was this idea that there was a way for them to reach down from wherever they were, or up, in some cases, and give that communication. But there was also this seeking of trying to really understand what was beyond death. Was it really as heavenly as the Bible promised, and things like that? So there was not I think we do kind of look at it as like this was considered evil and witchy, and this was considered devout, but really it was so popular. It was, as common as getting your tarot cards read today.
Varla Ventura coming up in hour 2 of Spaced Out Radio. Seances, communicating with the dead. Should we be playing this game, or should we leave it alone? That's where we're going. VarlaVentura.net is her website. We will be back with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio next. All right, Varla.
All
I'm gonna take
right.
a quick break here. I'm gonna go grab a water bottle or something. I'm
Yeah,
thirsty.
yeah, I am too. I've gotta look for something actually that I couldn't find earlier.
Okay.
A
I'm gonna
book.
send you back to the green room.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Hey, remember, hit up Cable Guy Matt for your free piece of coaxial cable. It's autographed by Cable Guy Matt. You want that. All right. Hello, Sovereign Farts. Fart hard. And Aussie Ange, nice to see you. Asteroid, good to have you back. And who else is sneaking in here? Sweet Robbie G. There he is from the Social Dig. Okay, I'll be right back, guys. Hi, Chris. Teen. Good to have you all here. Same room, just different look, Christine. I just turned my desk 90 degrees. Varla will be here momentarily. Blob apparently is not feeling good tonight, so Dirty Filth is babysitting Blob tonight. Hello, Varla. You got your mic on mute.
Sorry. Hello.
Big thank you to Simon, Rob, Deb, David ×2, Charles, Lily Pond, Dogface Simon. Thank you for the super chats and love. Don't forget to hit subscribe, ring that bell. Hi, Stu Gerson. Here we go.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Hanister. Hanister is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Here we go again. We have Varla Ventura. VarlaVentura.net is her website, and we're talking about seances, communication with the other side. And Varla, thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate when you're here.
Thank you for having me. It's always a joy.
Is communication with the deceased something that we should be trying to do?
I mean, I think it's fine. I think there's a lot of people who probably disagree with me about, specifically making contact with the dead through, ritual or, oracle boards or whatever. I know people who that is their primary source of magic. I know witches who work specifically with, the magic of necromancy and ancestral magic. So, it works for some people, right? I think it certainly depends on, like with anything, it depends on intention and the person. I think that there are people who are at any point in your life, you could be in a very vulnerable state, and that is probably not a great time to enter into, a seance, and especially if you're in deep mourning. Generally, doing some kind of ritual for release or contact within a year after someone's deceased is considered safe if done correctly. But walking into a seance where perhaps an unreputable person or someone you don't know is conducting it can put you in a very vulnerable state. And that's actually one of the issues with the spiritualist movement as it progressed, was that it also gave way to people who were, in fact, profiting from other people's loss and misfortune, and we're profiting from other people's grief. And we see that today, right? We see there's plenty of charlatan psychics out there that are going to tell you, what your deceased loved one give you a message, whether it's legitimate or not. There's also just as many legitimate psychics and mediums. So you just have to trust your gut and kind of like figure out what course, how willing you are to go there. Now, as far as like the average person dabbling, now I know a lot of people have very negative reactions to Ouija boards. This is a regular source of contention in discussions that I participate in. There's people who have tried them, never want to try them again. There's people who think that they have no power, and there's people who won't touch them. For whatever reason, even though there are dozens of other tools and divinatory tools and spirit boards that have been used over the years to make contact with the dead, the Ouija board in particular carries with it this heavy weight and sort of a misconception of it being evil. Now, I do think that there's a configuration that makes them very effective. But there's also a lot of Hollywood negativity about them being, gateways to demonic possession. Having said that, no, please go ahead.
Everybody seems to really have a nightmarish type story when it comes to the Ouija board or talking boards or whatever. I've got weird stories from it as well that I've shared over the years. I mean, so I can understand the fear people have in this if they're not used properly. I look at them though as more of a tool. Like if you're using a spirit talking board or a scrying board or something along those lines, I don't see any difference between that as somebody using a crystal ball or tarot cards or a pendulum or reading tea leaves.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I absolutely agree. And I've had a variety of experiences over the years with Ouija boards. But I think it is an inanimate object. And so it is only as scary as the power and fear you put into it. Just as it's only as effective. These things are tools, and they're known tools to work just as crystal balls. But the other thing is that not all tools work for all practitioners, for all mediums, for all people. Some people may really, really look into a crystal ball and really actually be able to see things. Other people could stare at it for hours in the perfect like meditative state and see nothing. So any person who is actually trying to make that kind of contact with the divine or the dead or, a specific spirit, or just generally, figure out what's going on out there or try and get some advice or whatever it is your intention is, it may or may not be as effective. But intention is a huge part of it. I think that one of the reasons that the Ouija board kind of gets so much negative attention is that anyone can just grab a Ouija board. You can get it at Target and you can just sit down and do the Ouija board. If you really want to set the atmosphere, you can light a candle. So very rarely are steps taken because it is considered a parlor game and it is actually culturally quite dismissed. It's one of those things that's like super feared, but also totally dismissed at the same time, as being like a kid's game or just being trickery, but at the same time, they're not going to touch it. So I think that because of that, there's very little preparation mentally and otherwise, mentally and physically, before many people use the Ouija board. And that is probably the biggest issue, not the board itself, but actually going in and, it's kind of like on those, there's those ghost shows where they barge in and demand contact. It's like, sure, you might get something, but is that really like the most effective way? So not taking any kind of precautions. And for many people, that could just be the mental state that they're in. If you enter into it with fear or hesitation, then anything that happens is going to magnify that, because that's what happens when you make any kind of spiritual contact or enter into any kind of group or individual trance like state. And so that includes, that it's just like, you don't go out hunting without proper protection, right? You just don't. And if you go about it with sort of a negative mindset and without preparing for physically or mentally, like a lot of people will do certain things, like maybe they'll cast a circle or just mentally invoke some kind of like protective force field, and will kind of know what they're going into. The other thing about the Ouija board, though, that I think really freaks people out, and I think this feeds into the fear of it as well as its effectiveness, is that it spells out things. So there's not as much room for interpretation as there is if you're using a pendulum over some symbols, or you're looking into a bowl of water scrying, or you're trusting what a medium is saying when they've made that contact, right? You're actually watching this planchet move around the board saying yes, no, and spelling out names. And so I think that gives it this extra kind of freaky element where there's less ambiguity in the answers, right? Is like, especially when it starts saying no a lot.
I will tell you, I have been scared by the Ouija board. The one story that really kind of creeps me out about it was, we were on a spirit board, not a Ouija board, a spirit board one night. And my friend's fireplace hadn't been lit since that morning, and it was 10:30 at night. And all of a sudden, we noticed the house getting warm. He looks over to the fireplace, and the fireplace is now burning. Okay, inside. He's got a wood stove. Okay, and there's a fire, full-on fire going on in the wood stove. So he asks all of us, did you guys stoke the fire? Did you put wood in there? We're all like, no, Dave. His name was Dave, and it was his fireplace. Okay, he loved the fireplace. No, man, didn't touch your fireplace. So he asked all the kids in the house, and they're like, no, we're not allowed to touch it. All of a sudden, our fingers are on the planchette, and it starts spinning around. And the lady of the house says, did you start the fire? And it goes to yes. And when we asked why, the spirit spelled out, I was cold.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, a little creepy,
Definitely creepy.
Yeah, you don't want to be burning things down during a Ouija board session or a spirit board session, but nonetheless, I mean, creepy things do happen.
Yeah.
How do we know, though, that we are actually communicating with the spirits that we want to communicate with?
So there's a pretty common belief amongst people who use Ouija boards on a regular basis that there's a certain amount of, I'm not sure if I remember the exact term for it, but it's like psychokinesis, right? Where your power of the mind is actually the thing that's moving the planchette. So that as a collective, or as one of the most, clear-headed individuals in the group, either everyone's thinking the same thought, or there's someone whose thoughts are subconsciously kind of driving that planchette around. So that's actually one school of thought on how the Ouija board works, that it's not that the board is actually possessed, but it's that the person possessed is maybe an extreme word, but it's a fun one, so we'll use it. But that the person is the conduit, and that they may be, even if they don't realize it, sort of controlling that with their mind. So there's quite a few people, and they're sort of more in the like Ouija skeptic category, that think that, especially with the kinetic energy of a group, that this can happen with everybody touching the same object. And it's the same kind of principle of like everybody putting their hands on the table and getting it to levitate. But there's something to that. There's something to a group. I mean, it's group meditation, it's group mindset. So I think like an example I can give you of a paranormal parlor game was, and I've probably mentioned this before, but both of my maternal grandparents were deaf, and they always had all of their deaf club friends over, and they used to play all kinds of paranormal parlor games. This is in like the 1930s. And so they would do something where they would all collectively think of something, and they would join hands, or they'd be sitting around a table and they'd think of an object from another room, and they would just think it and they'd hold it in their minds. And then my uncle would have to go into the other room and try and retrieve whatever it was they were thinking about. And they would do this quite frequently. You know, they play cards, and then they would, let's try this like psychic trick. So it was so common to kind of like do that type of thing. But there is something about the group mindset that's really, really important for any kind of seance. Even that's not to say that people can't conduct them themselves, that you can't do an individual trance or make contact as an individual. There's plenty of solitary practitioners out there, of course. But in terms of what we think of as a seance, in the more classical sense, having a group mindset is really it's critical, right? To have everybody. That's why usually in the modern seance, what will happen is somebody kind of sets the mood. You pass through a portal. Your hands are often cleansed. It's not like you just stroll in there off the street and like toss your coat down and say, all right, show me what you got. You know, there's a ritual element to it, just like with group meditation, you know, or any kind of group thought. Prayer is the same thing, right? This collective mindset. And so I think that, in terms of the Ouija board, I do think that there's something to that idea of kind of like moving things with your mind.
Yes.
I definitely think that there's an element of that, and it also does depend on who you're doing it with. However, I think that the Ouija board in particular, there's something about that or the spirit board. There is something about, right? The whole idea here of spiritualism is trying to get messages from the beyond. And the Ouija board leaves a lot less to interpretation, because it can actually answer the questions without having. Now, in a traditional seance, though, especially in the turn of the century and earlier, you always had a medium present with their hands on the planchette or with their hands on the spirit board. You didn't just have only people who walked in off the street. It would usually be like the lady of the house, a couple other people, but there was always a medium who was the one who would kind of conduct the communication. And this was for safety as much as it was for true believers. This was for safety, because a medium can take those messages from the beyond and handle it. Whereas if average, you know, Mary so-and-so gets possessed in the middle of a seance in the middle of St. Louis, all hell could break loose, right? So it's very, so I think like that, the mindset is very important there, with getting the Ouija board to be effective.
Okay, so when you are together, what power, and I'm going to get to some audience questions very soon here, but what power does having multiple people there help out with? Like, what is the purpose of having too many people there, or let's say 5 or 6 people?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's people who believe there's like a very specific spiritual number for a seance. It could be 13, it could be 8. Lots of schools of thought on that. But again, it's that, you know, there was that Masamoto, the writer Masamoto, who wrote about the power of water. And he actually analyzed molecules of water, and he had people sit together, a group sit together and have negative thoughts. And then he analyzed the molecules of water. And then he had people have really positive thoughts as a group. and they actually changed the makeup of the water. You could look at it again and see that it had shifted, it had changed. So that is a, like, scientific, scientifically documented and photographed version of the group mindset, of that power of people being together. I think if you wanted to have I think with the spiritualist movement, especially in the early 1900s, there was a lot of show. A lot of it was for show. There's no doubt about that. It was very popular, and like anything that becomes very popular, it becomes kind of, there's money grabs. There's people performing in front of, on stage in front of audiences, and so it loses. And you even see that, right? There's certain mediums who travel the world and they perform in like these huge audiences. It was really popular in the 90s, if you'll recall, these like television talk show mediums who could connect with people from, at random. And I'm not dismissing that. I'm just saying like that there's always like these extremes. But I think that there's to have a collective paranormal experience is actually quite transformative and quite rare. To have an authentic collective paranormal experience where more than one person or two or five or more people have the same experience, it's not as common as having a one-on-one. There's also something to the credibility, and it allows people to have, a means of discussing it after the fact. What did you think about that? I didn't really feel anything. Actually, that really scared me. Or I had the very same question in my mind when that other person asked it. There's a magical element to it, most assuredly, I believe. Just like, there's a certain amount of synchronicity that's involved in any of those kind of ritualized spiritual group experiences.
But if it was the power of the mind, wouldn't we see more people winning the lottery? Wouldn't we see more people changing their health? Like maybe they want to quit smoking, or they want to, stop their depression or anxiety. Wouldn't we be able to see that happen?
Well, I'm sure there's people out there who could really set their mind to it and use the Ouija board to get them their divine answers. It does have numbers on it, so I guess you could get lottery numbers, but that was never the purpose of it. The purpose was never to get rich or get, answers about, what horse to bet on. That has never been the purpose of the psychic arts, and it never will be the purpose. If it is, it's a lie. It's somebody trying to pull the wool over you. The purpose, even for spiritualism, and just to defend that divine purpose, really at its essence. And I am not a spiritualist, but I am a scholar of spiritualism. The at its very essence, it was to make contact with the other side, to get guidance on what to do, not to get lottery numbers, but to get guidance. You can go to Madam So-and-so to try and get your lottery numbers. I'm sure she'd be happy to take your money, right? But that's not really how it works. Plus, there's tons of, there's always going to be a skeptic in the room. So I think the group mindset comes into play, and we don't know that it's the power of the mind. All I'm saying is that there's quite a few people who believe in that school of thought, that the mind can move the planchette. But really the purpose is to make contact with something on the other side, an entity or a ghost.
We will come back with audience questions for the great Varla Ventura, the vivacious and vaunted Varla Ventura. VarlaVentura.net is her website. Find her books at any major bookstore or online. Space Out Radio continues right after this. 30 minutes to go, Varley.
Flying by. Flying by. Get the magician. You know, I don't do a lot of group, this kind of thing in a group, and one of the reasons is that I don't trust. I have trust issues, and I don't trust people's.
Excuse
Bless
me.
ye, bless ye.
Bless ye.
I don't necessarily trust people to be like going in it with the right intentions. Not that they have to be complete believers, but I don't know. Sometimes I just I don't know. I don't there's not very many people that I trust to do magic with, period. So
Would you do magic with me?
maybe.
Yeah, you would.
Depends
You
on what
totally-
it is. Yeah, okay, I'll just say yes.
I knew you would.
Answer
I
here
knew-
is yes.
yes. When in doubt, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Have you ever, like, when you go out Bigfoot, like, looking for Bigfoot? Wait, you just did a whole paranormal investigation, didn't you?
I may have.
Okay.
I'm not allowed to talk about it.
Okay. Got it. Except you posted about it on social media, which is how I knew.
Yeah. Yeah.
Called it.
Well, I'm not allowed. I could show photos, but I'm not
You're not
allowed.
allowed to talk about what you discovered. Yeah.
Exactly.
Is it a Merle exclusive?
Merle. Yeah,
Love
Merle was
Merle.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
There was some serious merling going on this weekend.
Oh, Merle.
Like 1:00 in the morning in the dead of the forest, and I just stand in the middle of the forest and scream, Merle! Absolutely. It was fun. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Hey, Super Duke.
The only reason I brought that up, Dave, is I was just going to ask you if you ever do any kind of, even if it's just a mental ritual before you walk into the woods or start
I usually do. I usually
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. I thought you
Um,
might.
I'm that guy. I will say I am that guy who does that. And like even this weekend when I go out to my Sasquatch gifting site, I will be, first thing I do is I hop out of the vehicle and I just talk, and I don't call it a prayer.
Yeah.
I think prayer is it's a little too ritualistic. I just have a conversation explaining what we're doing and explaining it's out of peace, love, and light, and that we're just there to say hello, and I don't know what that would be called.
Well, it's a setting an intention. That's
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I would call it. It's setting an intention and kind of
Yeah.
setting the tone for the experience that you want to have. It's
A
what
lot
you would do before any sacred
Yeah.
thing.
Like one of the things we do, or I will say, is I'll say thank you for allowing us on in your area tonight. Just want to say that we invite you to come communicate with us. We are armed, but this rifle is not for you. It's for any apex predators who may come in our territory and may think of us as food or harming us. And this rifle will not be raised in any sort of anger towards you or anything like that, right? So it's kind of ritualistic what I do, and I just it to me it brings down any tension that I feel in the forest. You know what I'm saying?
Do you say it out loud or you just kind of say it in your head?
Both.
Depends. Yeah. Yeah. I do know
Yeah.
what you mean. And I think that actually has a lot to do with the kind of, I mean, it's just respectful. It's just, it's just respectful. It's like I don't walk into a graveyard and just start kicking over headstones. You know?
Don't?
Do I look like that type of gal?
Let me say hello to a few people here.
Yes, of course.
Who joined us here. Let's say hello to Super Duke. Super Duke. Kevin, how you doing? Electric Cuttlefish. That's high quality merling for your first time in our chat room. Guardian Rocket. No relation to James Janos for Varla Ventura. But welcome to SOR chat. Here we go. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. Reminder to all of you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Final time tonight, author, researcher, Varla Ventura is back. We're talking about communication with the other side tonight, and we're going to take some audience questions as we go. You can check out Varla on our website, varlaventura.net. Find all her books at any major bookstore. Varla, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me again.
Always, Varla.
Haven't been kicked off yet.
No, not once. Debster wants to know, does Varla know Oak Hill Cemetery?
In San Francisco? In Colma, you mean?
Sure.
Probably, yes. So I'm trying to remember the names of all the different cemeteries there. There's the one that has like the circus people and stuff, and I can't remember if that's the Oak Hill Cemetery or if it's one of the ones across the street. So I'm not sure if I have them right. It's been a few years since I've been there.
All right, continuing on with audience questions. Let us go over to just another guy named Harry. Varla, if the analog typewriter behind you still works, or does it still work? And if so, what brand is it? Glad to see I own the last typewriter, he says.
Does work. I have about 7 typewriters. This is a Smith Corona portable. I don't know if you can tell, but it's actually quite light for a typewriter. It's really heavy. I can't do it with one hand. It's a Smith Corona. It's from I think it's from about 1965 portable, and it totally works. I also have a 1950s Royal, a 1910 Underwood, which doesn't work, and a Hermes 3000, and then another kind of 1960s little blue Royal, and then a couple electric ones, and I think that's it.
All right. Let's ask another one from Deb. Do you have any haunted dolls as friends?
So I do. As friends. Yeah, me and Robert the doll are close. I don't have any, I don't know if they're haunted, but I was gifted this really interesting. Actually, I found her I found 2 dolls on the street. Now, I'm not a big doll person. I don't really like dolls, but I found a kitchen witch on the streets of Amsterdam once, about I guess 20 years ago, kind of sitting on the top of some discarded elements, and she was just this lovely little thing. So I have her. And then the other thing I have is one time I found this really cool, I guess she's a voodoo doll. Her body is stuffed with Spanish moss, and she came from the South. That was a gift. So I have a few little I would put them in the poppet category. So they're sort of like good luck charms, but I don't have any. Well, I do have the head of a doll that I had as a child that had a changing face. And I love popping that thing on like a stake and walking around. Sometimes it really scares people, but it was this weird doll that had a hard casing around its head and a little lever in the back. And so when you would click it, it would spin, the head would spin, and it had 3 faces. So now out of context, it's next time I'm on, I'll make sure I have this doll head to show you guys. But the doll head itself has 3 faces. And so one is a crying baby, one is a sleeping baby, and one's a smiling baby. So when you would click the lever, the baby could do those different faces, but out of the shell and out of context from the body, it's just this 3-headed baby doll head, 3-faced baby doll head. So I'll make sure to have that on the ready for next month.
Well, that would be a good one. That would be a good one. All right, let's take another look here at another audience question. This one coming from the Doug Shelby. I'm supposed to ask you if you've been to New Orleans and seen the old above ground crypts.
So believe it or not, New Orleans is a city I have not been to, even though I have a couple of very close friends that live there now. And just last week, I had a conversation with my my best friend who I went to Scotland with, and we decided that we are going to New Orleans for some long weekend, hopefully sometime soon. And so I look forward to going to all of the. I have a friend that has a witch shop there, and another friend that runs like a ghost tour. So, yeah, friends in high places in New Orleans.
Very nice. Very nice. The Debster wants to. Oh, this was. I already asked that question. I'm sorry.
But just going back to the above ground crypts, I have been to some other southern graveyards that are set like that. For example, in Key West and down in like the southern parts of Florida, some of the cemeteries are very similar, where a lot of the, for obvious reasons, right, swampland, where the crypts are all above ground.
Very cute. Cool. All right. Derek Galloway wants to know, have you heard that the Parker brothers were deep into the occult?
So I actually have heard that is not true, but I don't know 100%. What I do know is that they were based in Salem. They were, these businessmen, game inventors. They were based in Salem, and so they certainly had plenty of exposure. Salem's been the hotbed of the occult for years. The guy who actually kind of invented the Ouija board was a little bit more of a cult believer, and his name, I believe, was William. I want to say, was it Flood or Fold? And I think it was Flood, Flud, and he actually kind of was the one who took what had been used as a spirit board for years. He took that and he started calling it the Ouija board, and he said he got the name from the board itself. And he's the one who kind of popularized the Ouija board and then sold the rights to that to the Parker brothers, who then continued making it. And they, of course, got sold to Hasbro, and they just, still make it. But whether the Parker brothers were into the occult, I am not I'm not an expert on that.
All right. Continuing on, let's go to who's up next. Another one by Derek Galloway. If you guys could say prayers for Mr. Ray, the elderly man we take care of. Yeah, Mr. Ray, get better. Get better for the Derek Galloway. We'd appreciate that. All right, Mr. E is asking, how do you properly use a pendulum?
So the cool thing about a pendulum is that it doesn't actually have to be, an official pendulum. If you are like a very, very drawn to crystals or a certain kind of stone, you can find a pendulum made of that. But essentially, a pendulum is anything that's on the end of a chain that you can kind of dangle back and forth. And the number one thing that you need to do with the pendulum, of course, you want to make sure you're in the right mindset and that you are ready to sort of like ask questions that you want answers to, and actually really to have a question in mind. It's kind of difficult to go into a divinatory situation with like no specific question. Like, what's the meaning of life? That's way too general for like a pendulum, right? You kind of more want to be like asking a series of questions that might lead to a decision you make, or if you're trying to help someone. But actually the most important thing about the pendulum is to figure out what means yes and what means no. Because if you don't establish that from the very beginning, so a lot of people will use a grid or a piece of paper. You don't actually need to use any of that. But what you do need to decide is, does yes mean, back and forth horizontally, or does yes mean back and forth vertically? And you just have to establish that and make sure you're clear on that, because otherwise, if you just, sometimes it'll go around in a circle. So you can experiment a little bit and see what sort of movements the pendulum makes, and then clearly establish to yourself or whatever group you're with, if you're doing it with somebody else, what those things mean. Does this movement mean yes? And then have that in your mind when you're asking the questions, so you don't get a big garble of, well, that could have been anything. If it suddenly starts spinning counterclockwise, that might be kind of off the rails a bit. But to be able to say like, okay, up, vertical is yes, horizontal is no, circle is whatever. You just kind of have to, like with any game, right? You have to kind of establish the rules first, so you know how to use it. And then of course, take it seriously, take it compassionately, make sure your hands are clean, all that good stuff.
That's always good stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. Isn't it though?
It's the same thing though. If you're, I've used pendulums and I've had some interesting encounters with pendulums, and I find them very easy to communicate with. Just because a pendulum may not work for some doesn't mean it doesn't work for others. It could work, like I'll give you an example. A ghost box does not work for me. I can't get people to talk on a ghost box, or spirits to talk on a ghost box. Yet I know people who, get full run-on sentences with a ghost box. And it drives me nuts. Literally drives me nuts. Right. And I wish I was like that, but it's not. It's absolutely not. So the idea that, some of these communication devices may work for some, but it doesn't mean they're going to work for all.
Absolutely. And even going back to the Ouija board, there's a number of psychic practitioners who use the Ouija board to do divinatory readings for others, just as someone might use tarot cards. So not all, it's not always just this like group seance setting. So and I would encourage anyone who's trying to use a pendulum to try different pendulums, because there's different materials. Actually one of the things that works the best for me is a metal one that was gifted to me, and it's not even officially a pendulum. It's actually a pen at the end of a chain, but it's from probably the 1940s, and it's this beautiful kind of vintage pen that came with a little book, and that works really well for me for whatever reason, versus I have a crystal one that it just kind of just doesn't really do anything.
Right. Well,
I was just going to say, so you've had Joe Diamond on your show before,
yes.
And he actually has done, and he did this during the pandemic. He did like a group. He does this in audiences, but for a while he was just doing it like on Zoom. But he did a thing, and it included a pendulum, and you could just make sure you had a pendulum before, but it could be a necklace. And he did kind of a group question and sort of tutorial and question and answer with the pendulum. And it was really cool because it was all, everybody was in their little square, and you could see different people having actually very similar things happen. And then and everybody had their own kind of individual thing that worked for them as a pendulum. So it's kind of cool to see that like virtual group pendulum ritual.
Well, whatever works for some, right? Do you have any objects that don't work for you? Crystal ball?
Yeah, I mean, I have had success with a crystal ball, but not great success. Um, there's a few things I haven't really tried. I haven't done a lot of. I don't really like to work with mirrors too much. I haven't done a lot of like mirror scrying. And I think probably anything that I've ever used has not worked for me at one point or another. But usually when that happens, it's because of the mindset that I'm in. Either I don't feel comfortable, or I'm just kind of like not in the right headspace. But I definitely have my things that I use. I mean, I use tarot more than I use anything. And yeah, so I mean, I've probably tried it all at some point. Though there's a few things that I think I could benefit from having some guidance with. I've done automatic writing, but I've usually done that by myself. And so it's kind of like, isn't that just me writing? It's kind of just me. So, yeah.
Mr. Ozzy would like to know, what do you say to your sister who's too afraid to join you on a ghost tour looking at Science Melinda in our chat room? You go, Science Melinda, and you close your eyes. And
Just
you go.
No, you say, I'll protect you. That's what you say. I'll protect you.
You
Don't worry.
Let's get to another question here. Paramarv would like to know, Varla, you just mentioned using a crystal ball. Do you see an image in the ball or in your head?
In the ball.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, but it hasn't worked for me a lot. And so for one thing, the first time I tried it, I don't think it was and it doesn't have to be crystal. I think you can do it with glass and stuff, but the first time I tried it, it didn't work, and I think that it wasn't real crystal. The second time I tried it, I had a different setup, and I actually was using it in somebody's shop. And that I just kind of saw, it was a little bit to me like tea leaf reading, where there was a lot open to interpretation. It wasn't like this amazing mist that swirled around in a very clear image of a person doing something or a horse riding or anything. It wasn't like that at all. It was much more like open for interpretation, much like if you've ever done tea leaf reading, which is really fun to do. Where you it's just that whole wonderful ritual. You make a cup of tea, you sip the tea, and then you look at the shapes that you have to use, of course, whole tea leaves of some kind. You can use mint or whatever. And then you kind of look and see what sort of pattern your tea leaves, is a little animal or is it, and then each thing kind of means different things. And I have a book that I always refer to because I can never remember. But I even have a really cool fortune-telling cup, and you guys have probably seen these, where how you set the cup down on the saucer actually has astrological configurations, so you can add that into a reading. So if you're doing a reading for someone else, you don't say, hey, how you set that cup down. You just let them do it, and then you look at their tea leaves, and you can kind of, it's like a more robust reading. So that's fun.
Fun times
in the paranormal parlor.
I've never used a crystal ball. I don't know. There's something about them that just freaks me out a little bit.
Dave, I could see you using one that isn't just clear, but maybe one that was like a particular color, like a purple or, like a amethyst crystal, or maybe one made of fluorite or something like that isn't just a solid color.
Maybe. I don't know. I just look at it as I see. Maybe it's just me. I see the crystal ball being part of the. I'm not saying they don't work, okay, but I see the crystal ball being part of the phoniness of the fake psychic Whoopi Goldberg in the movie Ghost.
Yeah, because it's totally depicted. Yes, absolutely. And that whole image of like Madame Fortuna looking into the crystal ball certainly has the charlatan connotations. So I can see that. I think one thing that's really important to know about the crystal ball is that you don't really use it like you use it the way that you would use kind of like the way you'd use a pendulum, but like you use it to give you like a little bit of guidance and clarity on something. So you're not necessarily reading for another person. I don't read somebody else's deal. I don't really read for very many people in general because I'm not a psychic, but I do have some psychic intuition and I do use a lot of the tools of a medium, and I use them just for my own kind of like grounding and spiritual purposes. So I think I can totally understand that. But I do think it can be beneficial because anything that can like shift your focus and clear your mind can be very beneficial when, trying to find answers or make life decisions or, go into the forest and look for things that go bump in the night.
Yes. Who doesn't mind things going bump in the night, even though there are certain areas I won't go into anymore, but that's for another time and another story. Varla, we got 2.5 minutes. If you are somebody out there looking for a psychic or intuitive reading, what should they beware of?
A large fee. Now, I believe I do believe that like any other art form, I mean, I was kind of raised that you don't do spells and rituals and readings for money. I was just raised that way, but we weren't a professional operation. We were just some witches up in the woods with our tarot cards by candlelight. So I have sort of an aversion to not an aversion to people making things that can be used in rituals or anything like that. But I think really what the readings that I have had that have been the most accurate are have either been like the first reading is free. That's often happened for me. The first reading is free, or there's an exchange, but also just one that it's not a hurried thing. So if you're looking like tarot cards, there's lots and lots of excellent tarot card readers out there. It's a combination of memorization and psychic intuition. And I would encourage people to go to their local occult shop to find the readers for something like that. But if you're looking to do kind of like a bigger reading, maybe over the phone or whatever, look for something that takes a good chunk of time, not a 20-minute reading, but look for someone who's going to actually take you through a year in your life and give you a good reading. And, also they will provide you with a recording. A good reputable psychic will provide you, especially with those longer sessions, will provide you with a recording of the session, so you have something to refer to. But there's nothing wrong with paying people. I mean, it's another form of art, like it's like writing. People deserve to be paid for their talents. But there are certainly, be wary. Go on recommendations that somebody tried this person. But I think some of those things, like what you're getting for it, if you're getting like a big picture, and again, go into it with a good idea of what you want out of it. Don't go in there saying, what should I do with my life? Go in it saying, I'm at a crossroads. This is what I need. Or, have something in mind that you're looking for guidance on specifically, rather than just getting a vague reading.
That's why we love you, Varla Ventura. VarlaVentura.net is her website. Coming up next, Among the Missing with Steve Stockton. Then Bigfoot, Michigan Rob brings the Cryptid Report. Then it's Dave 101 night and the weird news of the week. Spaced Out Radio continues after this. Thank you, Varla.
Thank you,
We
Dave.
love you, Varla.
Always lovely. Love you too. Talk to you soon. I'm
We'll talk
sure.
to you next month.
Talk to me next month.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye, dear.
Bye.
Bye. That's Varla Ventura. Be right back, people. All right, my friends. Jimmy 999, how are you? Thank you for the compliment, by the way. All right. Where are we here? Got about 1 minute. I feel like I'm forgetting something, and I don't know what. Oh, I know what I'm forgetting. The news. Because we kind of need the news. All right. Thank you tonight to Big Dog, David Times 2, Lily Pond, Charles, Deb, Rob, Simon, and Thomas for the great super chats. Very much appreciate the love and support. And we're going to get going. If you haven't yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, as it helps us grow each and every day. Here we go with the third hour, everyone.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Hanister. Hanister is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. It is that time of the night where we say hello to Steve Stockton to bring us in with another creepy story.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Among the Missing YouTube channel on Spaced Out Radio. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'm about to take you on an unbelievable journey of people just like you. Their stories and encounters will haunt us on Among the Missing. Scott Smith, bassist for the rock band Loverboy. Loverboy, the band, was wildly popular in the 80s with some songs on their roster like Working for the Weekend, which went to number 1 in Canada and the U.S., Loving Every Minute of It, number 1 in the U.S., This Could Be the Night, number 1 in the U.S., and When It's Over, which went to number 1 in the U.S. Collectively, they sold over 23 million records and were not a one-hit wonder. Loverboy, originally named Coverboy by lead guitarist Paul Dean, but later changed, was formed in Canada in 1978, but toured the world over many times. Smith was the founding member of the band and bassist for the group for the entire time. Their debut was opening for the band Kiss in Vancouver, British Columbia, and they still sell out concerts to this day. In the year 2000, Smith was on a boat bound for Mexico from Vancouver, British Columbia, with 2 friends and his girlfriend when a storm started to stir the waves into 25-foot swells that eventually knocked the boat onto the port side of the Golden Gate Bridge off the coast of Ocean Beach, California. Friend Bill Ellis, who was also on the boat, was down in the cabin changing into storm gear, and when he made his way back to the controls, Smith was missing, along with the boat's steering wheel. The remaining crew was able to get the boat upright eventually and come about to the area where Smith was last seen. There was no sign of Smith nor any debris, even though they searched for an hour. The two friends were unharmed, and the girlfriend was treated for hypothermia and released from a nearby hospital. The Coast Guard was called, and a search was started, but hampered by weather and a heavy fog that rolled into the area. 133 square miles were searched, but no sign of Smith was ever found. A private search and rescue was also done, but they were also unable to recover anything from the wreckage and never located Smith's body. Experts weighing in on the missing persons case suggest that no one could survive in those waters for more than 2.5 hours due to hypothermia and sharks. Scott Smith was just 45 years old. The band resumed touring a year after his disappearance in Smith's memory.
And we say thank you to Steve Stockton for another great episode of Among the Missing here on Spaced Out Radio. It's always a good time. If you want to learn more, hear more, go to his YouTube channel, youtube.com/Among the Missing, and hit subscribe today. From the missing to the mountains, it's time for the bandanaed wonder of the world, Bigfoot Michigan Rob, filling in for Super Duke on the Cryptid Report.
Do-do-do-do-do.
All right, filling in for a vacationing Super Duke all summer long as he's stuck in the mountains of Montana looking for this giant Wookiee we call Sasquatch. Here's Bigfoot Michigan Rob, but we can barely see him on camera because he's wearing a camouflage bandana tonight.
Yes.
Where are you, Rob? Where are you?
I'm missing an action in Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. See the woods in back of me? There's a portal forming behind me, and I got the good old camouflage bandana on.
Love it. Love it. I appreciate you filling in tonight on the Cryptid Report. There's so much going on in the cryptid world right now, man. It seems like everybody and their dog is having a sighting these days, Rob.
Everybody and their dog is having a sighting. In fact, for this report this evening or late, wherever you're at in the world, this is a Dogman report.
Oh my!
Go figure. And it's I had gotten this several months ago, Dave. And first of all, thanks for having me on in the replacement of the never replaceable Super Duke. And I'm going to get on with it. So this took place in Potato Creek, Indiana State Park. This was the summer of 2013. And the person that sent this to me, he's going by the name of Jim, his wife Peggy, and his son Mark. So they went camping this summer day. And it was one of these parks where, Dave, they allow you to trailer your horses up to the park. And they drove up in an RV. And the son, Mark, he took a separate vehicle and had the trailer with the two horses. The horses were named Sadie and Annie. Trail it up, Indiana State Park, Potato Creek, 2013. They get settled in at the RV park, and as soon as they get there, they notice a stench coming from the wood line. Now, they are about 20 yards in back of them. There's like 4 or 5 trails designated for horseback. So they thought nothing of it. It's a hot, sweltering day. You can travel horseback. So obviously, you're going to get some sort of smells. So the father, Jim, and wife Peggy, they rode on one of the horses, and Mark took the other. They're going down the trail, and they're maybe a quarter mile in. Now, I have to say this, that Jim and Mark, they also were avid Bigfoot researchers. They knew about Bigfoot. They knew about Dogman. They studied it, and they were into that. That was one of their pastimes. So going upon this trail, they seen large pieces of scat across the trail. Jim and Mark thought it was kind of unusual because having their own horses, they noticed that it wasn't your typical horse manure, right? So They get off the horse. And of course, Peggy, the wife, is, "What are you guys doing? Looking at feces." "Hang on a second, Peggy," Jim says. They get off the horse and they check it out, and they found it to be highly unusual. So they started walking up a trail, and then they saw these oversized. They saw these oversized footprints. They were wolf-like prints.
Oh, no.
Sizable. Yeah, they're sizable. But the funny thing is there's no like wolves in this part of Indiana. In fact, Dave, I don't think there's any wolves in the state of Indiana. So they get back on the horses and they take down the trail. Have an enjoyable day. Turn around. They get back toward the RV. Again, they were living in the RV, and then they had the trailer for the horses 30 yards from the RV. They get back. Jim and Mark, they hose down the horses, make them nice and cool. They put them in the trailer. And then prior to this, however, Jim dropped off the wife Peggy at the RV. So as soon as Mark and Jim are leaving from taking care of the horses, Peggy comes running out. "Come quick, come quick." So they both rush to the RV. And around the RV was a bunch of oversized prints, much like they found on the trail in the woods. So they're inspecting this, they're looking at this, and they're thinking, they don't want to tell Peggy. The husband or the father and Mark get together and they say, "Man, this looks kind of like this is not right. These should not be around here." So the father, Mark, or Jim, excuse me, decides, "You know what? I'm going to get with the administrators in the morning and have them come out here and inspect these tracks." Okay. Later in the evening, they're sitting around a campfire. The sun is setting, and from the distance, they hear a bunch of howls. As is stated to me, these howls were very loud and very distinctive, but at the same time, they could not discern what these howls are. And according to this report, it was kind of scary. So the three of them, Peggy, Mark, and Jim, they call it a night and they go back to the RV. They get back to the RV, they stay up for a little while, fall asleep. Several hours later, about 3 o'clock in the morning, they hear these howls again, more pronounced and closer. In fact, these howls came from the trailer where they bedded the horses.
Mm-hmm.
They get out of the RV, they look towards that area, and they notice that the RV trailer doors are swung wide open. Jim is armed with a shotgun. Him and his son, they race toward the trailer where the horses are, and they see this humanoid figure running out into the woodline. Now, Jim, for whatever the reason, as he states, fires at this humanoid toward the tree line, which he said was a bad idea. Gets to the trailer. He's more concerned now with the horses. Now, one of the horses on the rear quarter, he noticed, because the horses are bucking and one of them was kind of whimpering, an unusual sound that he had never heard from these horses. And again, in the quarter leg of one of the horse, he looked at, he was scratched and clawed at. And there were 3 distinctive claw marks on his hindquarters. A little bit of blood was coming out. Now, Dave, everyone listening, nothing, it wasn't profuse, as he states. It was, though the flesh was indeed ripped into. So, bewildered, thinking, what the hell is this? Again, fired at something. He says, well, this is not right. So he radios in, he calls into the front desk. Nobody answers. He calls the Sheriff's Department of Indiana to report this incident. So within a half an hour, at his RV and at this setting here at Potato Creek, Indiana State Park. The administrator of the park is there, the sheriff is there, and there's another person there that he describes as being maybe with the DNR or what have you. So they go over and explain what had gone on throughout the day, explain about the prints that he saw on the trail, the unusual scat on the trail, the prints around the RV, which he pointed out. And then, of course, there were prints also around the trailer where the horse was scratched. And he said, yeah, you know what? I did shoot. I'm sorry. I'm just going to tell you straight up. I shot into the forest as some humanoid figure. So, but the son says dog man. And again, Jim and the son were into Bigfoot, into dog man. They were weekend warriors researching. So all of a sudden, one of the it wasn't the sheriff, nor was it the administrator, but this third individual who they brought along corralled Jim and Mark and said, you said dog man. And they said, yeah, we're cryptid researchers, yada, yada, went out with a little story. And they said, look, please do not say anything about this to anyone. Then he motioned over to the sheriff and the administrator of the park. The three of them kibitzed. And then it was like, yes, please do not report this. And in fact, that night they said, look, excuse me, we're going to pay for any medical expenses to your horse. We're going to cover all your expenses for lodging here at our state park, and anything else that you need, we will take care of. But please, we don't want to start a public panic. Don't mention dogman or werewolf or anything of that nature. So, of course, Mark and Jim are suspicious. Peggy, the wife, is like, whatever. She knew what her husband and son did on the side. They get home. Not 2 days after leaving the park, they got a knock on their door. And it was again the administrator from Potato Creek, Indiana State Park, and another governmental official, not described in the report. But they were a little more, and they were in their house, but they were a little more affirmative, and they were more stern, like, do not report this. And in fact, Dave, the way they presented this to the family was threatening. What they did, the governmental official handed over a cache or a briefcase, a knapsack, whatever. And there was lined in this bag $10,000 cash, like hush money. They said, please do not report this. So they took the money. They didn't say anything. And later reports that I've gotten from this person is he feels like he's being watched. He feels his phone lines are tapped. His internet goes down. There's a lot of just really unusual things that have happened since this incident. Now, again, this story I'm reporting on took place in 2013. I got this email 6-7 months ago. Haven't spoke to the man since. I've tried to reach out to him again, but it's like sitting back, Dave, processing all this, and we've heard the stories before, cover-ups. We've heard about non-disclosure, disclosure, however you want to verbiage it. And I just thought that was an amazing story about a cover-up in Indiana State Park.
That is, we got to talk about this, man, because that is absolutely crazy that government officials would offer a $10,000 hush money bribe for not reporting this.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, imagine if that happened to any of us listening, radio audience, people in chat, where they offer them 10 grand not to say anything. Don't say dog man. I see Joe Monk says, I'll take 20,000, but thanks, Joe. But Yes, I mean, that is something, Dave, that has to be further investigated. And I've reached out to this man because I would like to investigate this or get somebody that's more an investigator, to look in this. These state parks, Dave, they make money, they have tourists, and for something this to get out for a state park, people are not going to go there. We've heard about the LBL, Land Between the Lakes, and the dog man supposedly murdering this family years ago in the 80s, I think it was. These things are out there, and I think a lot of these state parks, national parks, they're on high alert because I think more and more people are coming to the forefront talking about this, such like your show, my show, whoever's show. It's out there. People are being more open to it, and I think a lot of people are actually afraid of losing business and losing revenue. But that's not the point. People's lives are literally in danger.
The idea that this hush money came up, I apologize. I may have missed the year this happened.
2013 is the date, summer of 2013. So a decade ago.
That's not that long ago.
No, and I got this report 6-7 months ago. So it took this man this long to report it to somebody. And I just happened to be the guy who watches the show, I imagine. And he sent me an email because my email is on my channel, and I get all sorts of reports via that. And yes, Dave, it was. And again, that's I didn't read it. I did that all from memory, but there's things in this report, this email, that I could elaborate on. And I know this is, I got 20 minutes. So, but that's the crux of the story. And this man, though, literally, even today, and I got this in 2023, still thinks that he's being watched. He does not feel comfortable. And he lives in Indiana, South Bend, Indiana. In fact, he moved to Chicago, but he still thinks that he's being watched or followed. The guy is paranoid, and his wife is beside herself because now the husband has been telling me that he is just not himself anymore. Now the son is on a crusade, right? And again, I don't know what his crusade is, but I imagine he's trying to get down to the bottom of this and figure out why the payoff. Are these things for real? Has any other things been swept under the rug that none of us know about?
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. I mean, was it Michigan state officials who offered that, or was that federal government?
Well, again, this took place in Indiana, so it was at Indiana State Park. That's okay, David. It was at Indiana State Park, and it was the pay the visit to the house was the administrator from the park, and it was a governmental official that did not disclose what agency he was with, which the man in the email, Jim, told me he found that to be highly strange. Now, of course, I'm thinking Men in Black, how we think. I didn't get involved and tell him all that. But, Dave, there are these ABC agencies. We hear it all the time. They sweep up all these things. We've heard stories about alleged Bigfoot getting killed on a road and helicopters are flown in and suppose that the alleged Bigfoot or cryptid is swept away. And then they report it the next morning. Freeway 27, bear taken off of road in a car crash. People claims Bigfoot was involved. However, no, it was a rogue grizzly bear. So we hear these stories all the time. You hear them all the time. I get them all the time. And it just makes me cringe simply because of the safety. Listen, I'll still go in the woods. It's not going to deter me from camping or going in the woods and looking for evidence. But you have a family. Imagine taking a young family into the forest and these things are running loose. And the state parks, the government knows about it, yet they still allow you to go.
Bigfoot Rob, big thank you for filling in on the Cryptid report. Very much appreciated. Even though I couldn't see you with the camouflage bandana, I know you're there somewhere.
Hey, man, I was cloaking, my friend. I was cloaking.
Coming up next on Spaced Out Radio, it's the Dave 101, followed by the strange news of the week. We'll be right back with the final half hour of SOR right after this. Thank you, Big Robbie. Appreciate it, man.
Anytime, Davey. Glad to chip in when I can.
All right. Love you, man. Take care.
I love you. I'll see you later. Thanks, everybody in chat. Have a good night, Dave. Great show.
Bye-bye. That's Bigfoot Michigan Rob right there. That's why we love him. Never communicated with Satan. Don't plan on it. Sovereign Farts, you ripping hard tonight or what? How's the old grease gauge down there? CS, how are you? Good times, everyone. Good times. To Mothman, we need a beard update. Noble Patrick, how you doing, man? Leela Bresh, welcome to SOR chat. Don't forget to do a little shopping on our website, spacedoutradio.com. We got cool swag there. Yeah, we do. Thank you for the beard update, Tim Mothman. Very much appreciate it. We got 1 minute. Big thank you tonight to Thomas, Simon, Rob, Deb, David Times 2, Charles Lily Pond, and Big Dog for the great super chats. Very much appreciate the love and support. Merlot vision. That's very nice. Sovereign, the only thing your body produces is a trace amount of farts. All right, everybody, here we go. We rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. I want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. It is that time of the week where I yell at each and every one of you to get off my lawn. It's the Dave 101.
It's time for Dave 101.
Yes, the latest UFO hearings have come and gone and have elated everybody from the skeptics to those who are the blind believers that groups like Tom DeLonge and celebrities of the sort are the way to disclosure. We heard emotional testimony. We heard politicians for once asking proper questions. And I got to say, I was surprised it happened. I went into the hearings thinking, as you heard on this show, this is going to be another nothing burger. We're not going to get any juice. There's not going to be much fun. It's going to end up with Sean Kirkpatrick coming from behind the curtains to hit Tim Burchett with a steel chair, telling him to shut up and get off his UFO lawn. But that didn't happen. No, instead, we saw incredible testimony from Commander David Fravor from the 2004 USS Nimitz incident. From the East Coast, fighter pilot Ryan Graves gave testimony to what he has learned from fellow fighter pilots and as well as what he experienced himself. We learned from David Grush that he and his wife have suffered abuse since he went public. He didn't go into detail, but this is how serious this UFO game is getting. You see, more than the picture of the UFOs, and we will get into that momentarily, is this. We need to understand and realize there is more at stake here than just finding out if we are alone in the universe. No, this goes way beyond this. As we learned, and as the Congress people learned, there is some shenanigans going on behind the scenes regarding this topic that no one ever expected. How is this happening? Well, it actually started about 70 years ago when President Eisenhower warned the American public to not give in to the military-industrial complex coming out of World War II. Fast forward to today, that's exactly what has happened. The military of the United States gets all the good toys, many that they keep for secret. We can only imagine what they are holding on to, from advanced flight technologies to maybe zero-point energy. There's a lot to think about. But this is what we did learn. And it doesn't seem to have too many politicians happy right now. We learned that there's a lot of bullying tactics going on. There's a lot of threats to human lives going on. According to David Grush, people have been injured and potentially killed for the sake of UFOs. Think about that. The military-industrial complex does not want this story getting out. If the rumors are true, which I believe they are, and I steadfast believe they are, that means that the military, along with the alphabet agencies, have crashes, crash retrievals, pieces of spacecraft, fully intact spacecraft, whether they were given to us or not, or abandoned, and the pilots. Let us not forget the pilots. Little aliens, big aliens, aliens that may not have your best interest at heart. If we are to believe David Grush and his sworn testimony to the Congress people in the latest hearings, aliens are here, UFOs are here, and we are not alone in this universe. And the American military knows about it. But more importantly, the military contractors are involved as well. That's the scary part. Because if the military and the alphabet agencies have given the bodies to some biochemistry facility, and they've given the UFOs to some technological company, whether it's Lockheed Martin or Boeing or Raytheon, that means those companies don't have to say a thing. They get to stay silent. Why? Private companies do not fall under FOIA requests. Only government information does. So if the U.S. government does not have possession of these craft or the bodies at hand, there is no way for the American public to get FOIA requests to see where the bodies or the craft are. That's the downside. We also see politicians finally standing up to the military-industrial complex, appalled by what they are hearing, that their own government is doing things that only happens in other countries, hurting your own citizens for the sake of UFOs, all in the name of national defense and threat narratives. Think about that. That's not cool. People may have died. The most famous story is the Paul Benowitz case involving former intelligence agent Richard Doty, who still to this day goes on numerous podcasts of UFO podcasts and radio shows to discuss the topic. He has also been on numerous documentaries. There are many who believe that he should have been responsible for Mr. Benowitz taking his own life. Many people believe that Doty is a murderer for feeding into the fears of Mr. Benowitz. But he walks a free man with no guilt. That's on him, and whatever happened there, that's before my time, probably before yours as well. But we know it's happened. We know that the Pentagon is not happy with David Grush. We know the Pentagon hasn't been happy the last number of years with Luis Elizondo, going as far as to erase emails that the man never existed and never held the titles of head of ATIP or OSAP the way we have been told and proven by many others. You might not like Elizondo. You might think he's a shill, might think he's a spy, or maybe you think he's a wonderful man trying to get the truth out there. But the fact is, it is proven that his information has been tampered with. We see all of this going on. Who's causing it? Why is it happening? because the American military and the military-industrial complex wants that technology. They don't want you and me as layman folk on this planet to get a hold of zero-point energy. They don't want us to figure out that gravity may not be what we think it is. They don't want us to think about anything of the sort. Why? Because we pay for things. We pay for gas for our vehicles, electricity for our vehicles and homes and our businesses. We pay for water in certain areas. We pay, and all we do is get nothing in return. And if they could use that technology against their own people, against other countries like Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, they don't want to give that technology to us. They don't want us to have it. That's their toy, not ours. They want to keep it away from humanity for allowing humanity to grow. They don't want us to have this part or that part or to question things. Stay in your little picket house with the 2.1 children, the one dog, the one cat. That's the American dream, isn't it? Except today you're filled with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of school debt. That's what you get for taking political science classes. Nonetheless, the military-industrial complex is finally being questioned. Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz, who, I'll say it, I think he looks like a mixture between Beavis and Butthead, especially with that giant forehead of his. Please take that as a joke. He comes in and explains how military people came up to him in his riding at Eglin Air Force Base, and they were told to cover up a UFO incident. So much so the base commander threatened the officers involved who were witnesses. That is not good. Now, Gaetz probably broke an NDA saying that, but at least he had the cojones to talk about it publicly in the hearings of UFOs. We heard Ryan Graves talk about a cube, a red cube, the size of an NFL football field, over another military installation, and then flew off only to come back the next day later on in the evening. That's huge. Think about how big a football stadium is. Not the stadium, pardon me, the field. 100 yards by 50 yards. That's incredible. But the threats and the negativity that go along with it. These past hearings were a huge, huge step towards opening the door towards disclosure. And as long as the politicians there, whether it was Tim Burchett, whether it was Anna Luna, whether it was AOC or Gaetz or anybody else who was there, they saw the reality of the military-industrial complex flexing its muscles against American citizens, showing that the military-industrial complex does not care for its own people. It's a monster on its own. And I believe this war between politician and the military-industrial complex will continue. However, to continue it, more brave men and women are going to have to come out with information and their stories. Imagine being a fly on the wall when David Grush said to the Congress people, I have a letter that gives names of people involved in the program who have seen things from bodies to craft to the buildings and where they may be. I'm paraphrasing there. That is a huge statement moving this ball forward. And as somebody who has looked at these congressional hearings as a waste of time, this one wasn't. We finally wanted the door open. We got it. And now it's a matter of seeing how this plays out. Does this play out honestly in front of the politicians the way it seemed to with this hearing? Or does this amp up the game for the Disclosure for Dollars crowd who wants their group, their entities, to be able to cash in on UFO research? Because America, my friends, you know that the vault is about to open for billions upon billions of taxpayer dollars looking in to unidentified flying objects. Hard to believe that's where we are today. Disclosure didn't happen. We moved bigger towards confirmation. But one thing we do know is that somewhere in the United States, there are spacecraft and their pilots in the hands of some American entity. That one you can take to the bank. That is your Dave 101 for tonight. Let me know how you feel. Post a comment below if you're on our YouTube channel. And let me know your thoughts. I want to hear it. I want to know it. I want to know what's going through your mind. And now, let's get to the news.
What time is it?
It's time for Shirky Poo's news!
All right, an employee of we're starting in Florida here. How could we not with this one? An employee at Chipotle has been accused of stealing customers' husbands because Yelp reviews don't lie, right? Yeah, there are 3 Chipotle locations in Fort Myers, Florida, and the eatery on South Cleveland Avenue supposedly employs a woman named Lucy. Well, horny little Lucy apparently goes by the name on Twitter at 58shorty, and she's been a naughty, naughty girl. Yeah, the tweet included some screenshots of a recent Yelp review of the restaurant with a caption, "Apparently, there's some controversy at my local Chipotle." Yeah, although it's impossible to verify the authenticity of the review, or if a woman named Lucy even works there at Chipotle, Complex noted that the same user, Jessica F., also left a scathing critique for the Cape Coral Veterinary Hospital with an ominous warning. 1-star reviews backed up Jessica F.'s claims, with Evan K. writing, "Don't send your husbands here to pick up Chipotle." They caution, next thing you know, Lucy is going to seduce them into sleeping with her like has with multiple married men. Other Yelp users got in on the Lucy bashing action, with Andrew L. writing, "Outstanding service. Lucy certainly knows her way around a big burrito." Meanwhile, David L. was straight up and asked, "Can I get Lucy's phone number?" Oh my. Oh my. Lucy's causing trouble, isn't she? Well, let's go to it. Pink works for Barbie, but will it work for hamburgers? Fast food chain Burger King hopes fans will be chomping at the bit to sample its new Barbie-themed meal to coincide with the release of the movie starring Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, good Canadian kid. In a tweet, Burger King Brazil showed off its new limited edition pink burger, which features a smoky dragon fruit pink sauce, cheese, bacon, and a beef patty served on a burrito-shaped bun, French fries served in a Barbie-themed container, and a pink Barbie donut shake. Isn't that nice? Oh, it's so pretty, isn't it? While the entire meal is aesthetically pleasing, in tune with Barbie, people have mixed thoughts about whether they would want to consume that fast food product. The pink on the burger is Pepto-Bismol, one person reacted. "I can already feel the stomach pain," said another. Some actually welcome the Barbie burger and were open to trying it. "Honestly, this looks good. Is this coming to America?" one fan stated. "Looks tasty. Not going to lie," said another. It's not the first time Burger King has experimented with its menu internationally. As of late, in Thailand, The chain released an all cheeseburger that contains nothing but a stack of American cheese between two buns. Normally, people wash themselves in the buff in the privacy of their own homes, but no, not this dude. A man from LaPorte County, Indiana, allegedly tried to take a shower naked while using a garden hose outside a stranger's home. LaPorte County cops were recently called to a home outside Michigan City after an elderly woman reported a naked man was trying to clean himself off with her garden hose. Oh, the poor lady. Cops said that they arrived to the woman's home to find a bottomless man with no running water for his cleaning session. The exposed man, 41-year-old Reuben Penn, reportedly told authorities he had sprayed himself with insect spray and his skin started to burn, and that's why he was trying to wash it off with the hose. Penn was arrested on the spot, charged with public indecency. The man was reportedly high on synthetic marijuana at the time of his arrest. Yeah, and we still don't know who the woman is, but there are questions about the American Airlines flight that was short-lived for a woman after it appeared she was arguing with herself. Yeah, in a TikTok video, a woman can be seen walking up and down the aisle of the airplane arguing with a person who allegedly didn't exist. The woman apparently demanded to get off the aircraft while stating that someone in the back wasn't real. I'm telling you, I'm getting the hell off this plane, and there's a reason why I'm not getting off, and everyone can either believe it or not. Yeah, she thought it was a reptilian back there. She thought the reptilians were boarding her flight, sitting beside her, and wanting to take her blood, to eat her soul. Or maybe they just wanted an extra pillow. I don't know. It's amazing how that lady has just vanished. And nobody seems to know who she is. Or the reptilians that were involved in that plane incident. Want to say a big thank you to Varla Ventura for coming on the show tonight for our Cryptid World, and a big thanks for Bigfoot Michigan Rob filling in for Super Duke on the Cryptid Report. Very much appreciate all of you tuning us in as well tonight. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother Is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAP, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio.
I know you're out there somewhere.
Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
We're watching.
we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home.
I know you're out there somewhere. Watching me.
Yes, the Woo Train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night. Good stuff. Good stuff. Nice show, people. Great work in the audience tonight, by the way. Fantastic work. You guys were outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. We appreciate that. All right. See if that'll do it. Good job. You guys should all be proud of yourselves tonight. We did that well. Ozzy Gold, how you doing, man? Sleep Experiment. Welcome to SOR chat. Mama Susan's owning the night. Oh, yeah. She knows how to get out there somewhere. Round table tomorrow night. Got a bunch of cool people coming on. Oh, behave, Vanessa. Oh, behave. Good night, Stu Gerson. It's time to go. Do. I am well, Aussie Gold. Thank you so much for asking, my man. Well, that'll eventually go there, so we'll just bring that there. Hold on, let me bring my screen up here. Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby. I love saying that. I'm not going to lie. It's one of my thrills each and every night. I amuse easily. Do. Yes, and of course, the Michael Leger, who's hiding in the distance in the background here. What is going on here? Why is that working? All right, that's logged in. That's logged in. That's logged in. It's number 3 or 4. Oh, shoot. Undo. Save. Clearing it? Why is it not clearing? Weird. Oh, why that ain't working? That's okay. All right, that one is done. All right, everyone. It's time for me to say goodnight. Tomorrow night on the show, we have the round table where we're getting into a lot of the UFO stuff. Once again, a big thank you tonight to Thomas, Simon, Rob, Deb, David times 2, Charles, Lily Pond, and Big Dog. Really appreciate you tuning us in. Thank you to all our new subscribers. Don't forget to leave a comment after the show. Let us know how you feel. Love to see you there. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Take care, everybody. Much love.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.